It's a gorgeous Saturday afternoon. Here I am, sitting in my favorite chair, a goofy smile on my face and a beer in my hand, watching the St. Louis Cardinals beat the perpetually losing Chicago Cubs 6-9 in the ninth inning. My good friend Jim is sitting on the couch, but he's not in as good a mood as I am. The reason for his bad mood is our story for today. You could say it started in college when I met Jenny, but it really started in high school when I met Jim. I was a sophomore on the junior team, and I wasn't particularly good. I stayed on the team mainly because I liked the game and the team spirit. The coach said that he kept me on the team because I showed others that you can enjoy the game for what it is, but I always thought that no one had tried it better than me. Jim was the new guy that the coach assigned me to look after. Jim had promise, and since I knew the game, I just wasn't skilled enough to play well. He assigned me to work one-on-one with Jim to get him to the high school level. I was the youngest of two and Jim was an only child, so I sort of became his big brother at school and kept the older kids from teasing him too much. You need to have fun, right? We soon became good friends off the court and were rarely seen apart. After spending some time at his home, I learned that his early life was not easy. His father abandoned his mother, Brenda, when Jim was 3. He didn't even bother to say goodbye. Jim's mom, Brenda, returned from the store with Jim to find that all of his dad's things were gone along with half the furniture, the good half, of course. They didn't have much anyway. When Jim was in junior school, Brenda met a nice guy named Phil, and things got better for them from then on. Brenda dated Phil for 18 months, and the three of them got along well, so they got married. Phil integrated well into their lives, even spending time only with Jim. It was Phil who encouraged Jim to try basketball and helped him maintain his grades so he could stay on the team. Phil was a true gentleman. So Jim's life improved, and he even got a new dad, which made his family complete. It was easy for him to let his older brother fit into the new family dynamic, and I think Brenda and Phil liked having Jim with me because it gave them alone time. The brotherly bond worked well because we were similar. Both are about 6 feet 4 inches tall, with brown hair, thin build, and blue eyes. This also worked well for me as I now had someone to admire. That's the feeling that makes your day. On the basketball court, Jim didn't look at me with admiration for too long because he had real talent. Coach Smith told us what he needed to work on, and we did it because I had a basic knowledge of the game just from watching the pros play and listening to the commentators. This was my skill. The coach even called me his unpaid assistant my senior year. Together, we led Jim to star varsity status in his junior year. We even made it to the Elite Eight in the state playoffs that year. Then it was time for me to graduate from high school and start college, leaving him behind. It was natural that I began to study coaching. My freshman year, I tried to convince the basketball coach, Joe Fields, to let me help him in some way. He waved me off with the phrase, "What does a freshman have to offer?" Of course, that didn't stop me from going to games and observing his style and strategies. Pretty soon I could predict what adjustments he would make, knowing the strengths and weaknesses of his players. If other teams could get my notes, they would have to work hard. I went back to high school for a couple of their games when my college team was playing on the road. Jim lagged a little in the first couple of games without me. I talked to him at halftime and reminded him that Coach Smith always told me what he needed to do and what he needed to work on. He just needed to trust the coach like he trusted me and relax because he was playing too hard. The second half of the game went much better. Old Jim is back in action. Another thing that happened was Jenny. I met Jenny at a party that my roommate dragged me to, saying, "All work and no play makes Ray a study-stricken nerd." In case you hadn't guessed, my name is Ray. I stood against the wall, holding my first beer and looking around for someone familiar, maybe someone to talk basketball with. Suddenly, my chest and stomach were wet and about 40 degrees colder than they had been just a second ago. I looked down and saw a beautiful brunette about 5 foot 6 inches tall with green eyes that took your attention away from everything else. "Oh, damn, I'm so sorry. I kind of tripped back there and I'm sorry." I was so amazed by those green eyes that I couldn't say a word out of anger. shock, or any other emotion. Usually I was speechless in the company of the fair sex, but this time my brain switched to neutral and the engine started. She automatically began brushing the excess beer off my shirt as I looked, trying to catch another glimpse of the green fields of tranquility I had seen just a moment ago. Then she looked up at my motionless face and asked, "Are you okay? Why don't you say anything?" My brain decided to put it in gear and shifted into second gear with a jerk. "I'm fine, wet and cold, but okay. I just got lost in your beautiful green eyes for a moment. I don't want this to sound like a cliché, but I've never seen such an exquisite shade of green before, and I just lost myself." "Well, you're a charmer. You're not completely bad looking either, just a little tall." It's worth noting that she had already had quite a bit to drink, as her speech was a little slurred, and she was a little unsteady in her 3-inch heels. "Now I need another beer. Can you help me get through the crowd back to the keg?" Normally, I would think it would take a lot of courage and chutzpah to ask the person you just spilled your beer on to refill your glass. Normally, I would tell her this, but those eyes found a warm place in my soul. One of her shoes slipped on a wet spot on the floor, and she fell on top of me. In an instant, my arms were around her, holding her gently but with controlled strength, supporting her well. My decision was made for me. "I realize I don't know you, but I think you've reached your limit for tonight. Why don't we sit on the outside veranda and discuss this? Then, if you still want one, I'll bring it for you." "Oh, you're also a gentleman. That's something a girl could get used to. Let's talk." As soon as we went outside, where the music was not so loud, we met and talked for a couple of hours. We started getting along and agreed to go out on a date the next evening. We dated slowly for the first few weeks, given our classes and home basketball games. She was okay with my obsession at first, but I felt like it bothered her a little. When the season ended, we had more time to spend together, and all was well in the world of Ray and Jenny. We had been dating for a little over 8 months, and things were getting serious between us. My last Friday class was on the west side of campus, and my dorm was a 30-minute walk or 15-minute bus ride. To my surprise, I saw Jenny's car, a classic red 1966 Mustang, parked along the street just half a block from the building's door. Her father spoiled her a little, but he had the means for it. I thought she wanted to start our date early that evening and came to pick me up. As I drew closer, I was preoccupied with my plans for the rest of the day. First, a trip to my hostel to drop off my books and get ready to go out. Maybe we'd have time for a little kissing before we headed over to her house if my roommate went home at noon, like he almost always did on Fridays. I heard a familiar sound that brought me back to reality, as if a huge rubber band had hit my hand. My anger grew with each step as what I believed was happening was confirmed with each step closer. "It's probably not Jenny. Maybe she lent the car to someone else," I thought. The next thing I knew, I was standing next to the car, looking in the back seat, where my Jenny was with some guy. I heard a noise behind me as the lawnmower turned on, watering the newly planted trees and bushes a few feet away. Without thinking, I grabbed the hose, folded it in half, and removed the sprinkler. I brought the hose to the machine and partially closed the end of the hose with my thumb to increase the pressure and doused them both before they realized what was happening. "Who do you think you are? Why did you do this?" I demand. Mid-sentence, I removed my finger from the hose, allowing her to see what was happening. "I thought I was your boyfriend, but now I see I was wrong." Throwing the hose on the ground, I looked into those wet green eyes, hoping that this was the last time. At least I found out about it before I did something stupid, like asking you to marry me. By then, about 10 people had gathered to see what was happening, and more were arriving. They didn't see me hit the idiot, but they heard Jenny's screams and saw the hose dousing the sweet girl. Hey, I'd come take a closer look too. "Ray, it's not what you think. I love you, Ray." He was just. He was just the end of everything we had. If you love me like you say you do, then you have a very stupid way of showing it. Jenny looked around for the first time at those who were looking at us and became very embarrassed by the fact that she was wet in a white shirt. Jenny, I calmed down a little. I've never cheated on you, never even considered the possibility. I won't tolerate it, not even once. They say once a cheater, always a cheater. There is a reason these things are said. They are called truths because they are usually true. We're done. Don't call. Don't come. Just stay away from me. You and the idiot are perfect for each other. Jenny, do me a favor, do all decent men a favor, go to hell and stay there. I watched as she looked at the rising figure of her illicit lover, fell to her knees, and began to cry. I left as everything was said and headed to the bus stop. While waiting for the bus, I decided the weather was good enough for a walk, and I really needed to clear my head. Jenny never came to talk to me, and I was mostly grateful for that. I still had a few things I wanted to say to her if she dared face my wrath, and a few questions that were probably best left unanswered. I felt no malice towards this spoiled, cowardly traitor, that's what I told myself. Okay, I lied. My little brother got a basketball scholarship to the only college my parents could afford, a nice old state university about 45 miles from home. I still attended games and echoed the coach. Jim and I discussed my observations after the game, and he was interested in seeing what would happen if the team actually tried some of them. During our fourth home game that year, I caught Jim's attention right before halftime. The stupid issue Redbirds kicked our asses and then gave them back. Coach Fields tried different things, but nothing worked. I told Jim to tell the coach that our power forward is left-handed and the other forward is right-handed. While on paper they match their forwards the way he lined them up, their forwards are also a left-handed, right-handed pairing. Tell him to swap the forwards so they match righty to righty rather than lefty to lefty. Needless to say, the coach was willing to try anything that might work, so he did it. The second half of that game was our awakening. Nothing went wrong. We won by 15 points after being down by 20 in the first half. After the game, the coach asked Jim why he didn't tell him about this earlier. Coach, it's not my idea. It's my buddy Ray's idea. He loves basketball and is studying to be a coach. So when can I meet him? We can always use that kind of intelligence on our side. That's how I came under the wing of a basketball coach. The remaining time passed relatively calmly. Jim and I kept an eye on each other to make sure we both stayed out of trouble, but still had a good time. We both dated, and in my senior year, I met a wonderful girl, Katie, who shared my views on many important issues in life, especially fidelity, but we were in no hurry, since we had both experienced difficult relationships. However, we got married a few months after I graduated and got a job on the state university coaching staff. What can I say? Coach Fields liked my style and my ideas, which, I must admit without false modesty, usually helped. Taking the job also gave me another year with Jim, although we could no longer communicate freely as we were now players and assistant coaches. Jim seemed to have a shot at being drafted in the pros, so his senior year was probably his most important. We spent as much time together as we could throughout the season, honing his skills and discussing plays and strategies for upcoming games. He was at the peak of his powers that year, and our team seemed to have a good chance of getting to the big dance, which would give Jim national exposure. We were underdogs in the first round of the NCAA tournament, but Jim had a great day and we won by 12 points. However, we were knocked out in the second round that year, but it was our best result in 15 years, so we were all pretty pleased with ourselves. Coach Fields said he is proud to the core of each of us and the role each of us played in our success this season. We had a great time celebrating the victory. Jim told himself that even though his chances of being drafted were good because the experts said so, he would graduate if it didn't work out. He decided that he did not want to play in the European League if the professionals did not select him. He loved his family too much to be so far away for so long. The good news was that Jim was drafted late in the third round by the Chicago Bulls. It was great because we thought he was going to be drafted in the fourth or fifth round, probably by some team across the country. Bulls Stadium was only 5 hours away. The bad news was that halfway through his first year as a pro, a brutal foul by a Detroit Pistons player resulted in Jim's right knee breaking. A Pistons player ejected from the game. Unfortunately, Jim's career ended. Katie and I have settled into our lives. I'm at State University, and she's a chemist, controlling the quality of products at a corn and bean processing plant outside the city. We saved extra money and saved even more. As a result of this savings, 18 months after graduating from college, we purchased our starter home, a 3-bedroom ranch house. We planned to starting a family in 5 or 6 years, but at that point we just wanted to enjoy life together, get a good start in our careers, and furnish and decorate our new home. We had been living in our new home for almost 2 months when we learned of Jim's knee injury. Katie became close to him, how could she not when I spent so much time training him in the last year? So it seemed natural to ask him to move in with us for a while until he could develop a new plan for his life. Jim declined as his mum and Phil insisted he move in with them, but he wanted to keep in touch, which meant us visiting him regularly for a while. Katie didn't mind this as it gave her more time with my parents when we went home for the day. After Jim underwent rehabilitation from 2 surgeries, he was able to walk with almost no limp. Some people didn't even notice it unless they knew what to look for. He took a job as an insurance agent with one of the largest and most respected companies in our hometown. His whole time as a local sports celebrity helped him get his foot in the door, but it was his caring personality and genuine charm that helped him make the sales. Life was good for the three of us. During the off-season, we either went home almost every weekend to visit family and Jim, or Jim would come over and stay for the weekend, sleeping in our spare bedroom. Last week, Katie asked Jim about his love life because she had a friend at work who could be introduced to a nice guy. Jim said he had been dating a girl for about a month and had a good feeling about it. I was thinking it's time you met her, so I'll see if she wants to come with me next weekend, if that's convenient for you. Jim, that's great. We have 3 bedrooms, so she can have her own, or if you're both willing, you can share one. It's your choice. I smiled at him, winked, and nodded. We're looking forward to meeting the girl who was able to tie up my friend. I laughed and lightly hit him on the shoulder as a joke. She hasn't tied me up yet. Let's just say she's got the rope and has the lasso ready. Jim smiled, parrying my metaphor. He didn't say anything else about her except that she was cute and special. It was 6 days ago, and I went out for my 3-mile run on Saturday morning, expecting Jim and his mystery girlfriend to arrive around noon for lunch as usual. So when I got home at 10, I thought I'd have time to shower and rest before they arrived. I was wrong, oh, how wrong I was. When I turned the corner of my block on my way home, I saw a red car in my driveway, but I didn't know whose car it was. As I approached, a feeling of anxiety came over me. Then all the anger and pain came back to me. I couldn't believe he somehow got involved with that stupid slut, Jenny. The license plate confirmed my worst fears. My first instinct was to throw open the front door and scream, "Get this traitor out of my house." When I grabbed the handle of the mosquito door, I thought and changed my mind. How will this affect my relationship with Jim? I asked myself. No, as much as I wanted it as much as she deserved it, I couldn't do that to Jim. I took a deep breath and stopped to think. I decided to contain my feelings and tactfully warn Jim later. This will be easier for him to accept, and maybe I can save him some pain. If he doesn't heed my warning, I'm sure she won't want to come back here anymore, just as I don't want to see her here. Either way, that was the last time she set foot in my house. I took another deep breath and grabbed the doorknob, hesitated, sighed one more time before opening the door to my home and my acting career. "Here he is," Jim shouted to the girls in the other room as I entered. "Jim, you arrived early. If I had known, I would have gone for a run sooner. I'm glad to see you." We hugged with one hand, as always. Katie and Jenny came out of the kitchen to complete the circle of acquaintances. I had an advantage because I knew who she was, and perhaps she hadn't yet realized that Jim's friend Ray was her old boyfriend Ray. I was right. Jenny followed Katie into the living room and saw the cold look on my face. She let out a wow and covered her mouth with her hand to stop further noise. For a moment, she looked like she might faint. "Hi, Jenny," I said coldly. "Long time no see." "Oh, have you met already?" Jim asked. Yeah, we met at a party during my freshman year of college, I replied, looking away from Jenny and changing my expression to a friendlier one, turning to Jim. So do you think the Cardinals will take the division this year? I pulled him away from the girls and directed him to the TV, which was showing a preview of that evening's baseball game. I thought it would be fun to torture Jenny a little if I could behave decently and not directly insult her. Katie looked at me in disbelief that I could be so rude. She then looked at Jenny and saw the expression on her face and decided there was more to the story. Katie tried to take Jenny back to the kitchen, ostensibly to make lemonade for everyone, but really to find out more. Jenny decided not to leave Jim's side, afraid that I might tell him something. After a moment, I remembered that I needed to take a shower and excused myself. I had already turned on the water and was almost naked when Katie walked into our bathroom with the inevitable question, "What the hell was that?" It's quite a long story that I never shared with you because I didn't want to reopen old wounds. It's the reason why I wanted to take our time to mend our relationship. I'd rather not go into too many details right now, and I'll tell you all about it later. For now, just understand that this is the last time she will be welcome in this house. She looked at me in shock. I realized that I might have spoken too loudly, but I hoped that the noise of the shower would drown it out. You can't say that. She seems like a good person. What if she and Jim get married? Will you stop seeing Jim? I really hope it doesn't come to that. I think Jim will have to come without her. I closed the shower door, hoping to close the topic the same way. I knew better because Katie, like most wives, will not stop there. I said, hopefully. The rest of the day was tense. Even Jim felt that something was wrong, but Jenny never left his side. I could have waited. I was in no hurry as I wasn't looking forward to it. When it was time for bed, as I expected, they shared a queen bed in the first guest room. As I turned off the light and lay down in our bed, I knew that the second phase of the Spanish Inquisition would begin at any moment, so I started first. Over the next hour, I talked in detail about our meeting, dates, and public breakup. I tried to be objective, but it is very difficult to do when it comes to such an emotionally charged issue. I even told her that I was thinking of proposing to her soon when I caught them together that day. Her first question startled me because I had never even considered this as a possibility. Do you still have feelings for her? Just disgust and a little anger. I told her that day that I wouldn't tolerate cheating, not even once, and that goes for you too. I'd be a complete hypocrite if I even considered cheating myself, especially with someone like her. Damn, after what she did to me, I could never do that to someone I love. I'd rather drive off a cliff. If she hurt Jim, I don't know what I'd do to her. Okay, I believe you. Just calm down or they'll hear you. What are you going to tell Jim? You have to tell him something. He's wondering what happened between you two. At first, I just wanted to tell her to get out of my house, but I calmed down because I didn't want to hurt Jim. I don't think I'll go into detail unless he demands it, but I will warn him that she cheated before and might do it again. I wonder what she's telling him because I'm sure he asked her some questions too. Maybe she'll confess to him on her own so you don't have to tell him. I think you should learn to tolerate her for Jim's sake. I'm not saying you should be friends with her, just don't be cold and insult her. You think, can you do it for Jim? I hope they don't get serious, but I'll think about it because he's like a brother to me. Hell, he's closer to me than my real brother. Hell, I hope they break up soon. The rest of the weekend was almost as stressful as Saturday, but now that I had an ally in Katie, it seemed a little easier. Maybe it was better because I expressed my feelings to Katie last night, but don't let it get out. I have a reputation to take care of. They left shortly after lunch on Sunday. I'm sure Jim felt the tension too. I missed him not staying for the game that day. This was just an example of what could happen if she came between us. After they left, Katie and I talked for a long time, and she agreed that I needed to tell Jim, and we came up with a plan on what and how to tell him. She changed my ideas a little about how I was going to do it, but she thought I was being fair to everyone. She also made some good points about different possibilities. I thought about calling Jim after dinner on Monday, but my day at work was interrupted when Ginny walked into my office, while I was going through reports on new recruits. My door was open, so she came in, and when I didn't notice, she spoke. "Ray, I'd like." I turned around sharply as if she had scared me, which is exactly what happened. It was my turn to look shocked when I saw her, but I quickly came to my senses without making a fuss. I took a deep breath and said, "I probably should have expected this, but I thought it would be a phone call. Have a seat, Jenny." She started to close the door before sitting down, and I replied, "No, leave the door open. The guys will think something weird is going on if you close it, especially with a woman here. I almost never close my office door. Neither one of the coaches here doesn't. We have an open door policy, and the university forces us to take it literally. I'd ask what you want, but I think we both know what you want. I'll tell you straight out that I'm going to warn Jim about you. However, I'm not going to go into details unless he drags them out of me. Because I don't want to relive that episode again, he will have to pull them out of me very much. I wouldn't be a good friend if I didn't warn him, but I hope you've changed. If this works out with you and Jim, which I honestly hope it doesn't, you'll have to be faithful to him, and I will. I mean 110% correct. Two more things you should know. I'll be keeping an eye on you. I still have friends back home who would be happy to help Jim get rid of a friend like that. They'll be my eyes and ears. The last thing you need to know is that, if you offend him like you offended me, you better run fast and far. If I find you, there will be no return from hell this time." I didn't know if she remembered my last words to her or not, but I made a reference to them. "Ray, I wanted to say something before we started, but you put it so well. And that's fair, I suppose, considering what happened between us. However, I still want to tell you this. I'm sorry. One thing led to another and—" "Stop right now. You don't have to explain it to me, and I really don't want to hear excuses. It happened a long time ago. I told Katie what happened, and she asked me if I had feelings for you. I told her honestly only about anger and disgust, mostly disgust these days." Jenny's face showed surprise at this revelation. I think she wanted to use any positive feelings I might have left to buy my silence. Perhaps I'm just flattering myself. I also told her that I will tolerate you, but only when Jim is around. This means that you are not welcome in my home or in my life unless he is with you. I will not try to undermine your relationship with Jim, just because I don't want to irritate him. He's been like a little brother to me for over 10 years, and in my family we put family first. So I'm trying to be fair and not take revenge on you for what you did. I'm warning you directly. Now, don't give me a reason to follow you. Ray, I'm truly sorry. I can only imagine how much I hurt you for you to still feel it that much. I want you to know that I cared. I thought we had something special, you and I. I feel the same way about Jim now. Don't worry, I've learned a lot since then. After we broke up, I cried for days. Then I looked back at what happened and realized that it was only me to blame. I couldn't even bring myself to meet with you to apologize and try to explain. The last thing you said to me was go to hell and don't come back. I was in hell without you, and it was only me to blame. Okay, you've said your piece, but I'm not changing my mind. I'm still not sure you're not cheating again. As I told you that day, once a cheater, always a cheater. Can you honestly look me in the eye and say that was the only time in your life that you cheated? She lowered her eyes in shame. Damn, I was hoping I wouldn't get that answer. That was before I met you. She still didn't look me in the eye, so I thought it was a lie. It doesn't matter anymore. Cheating is cheating. How could you cause so much pain to the person you claim to care about? At first, I thought there was something I did or didn't do that made you do this. Then I wondered, am I man enough for you? I was angry at you, and then angry at myself for not coping with something. I agonized over how long this went on and why. Was it a one-time thing, or did it last the entire time we were together? It took me several months to trust another woman enough to even meet her again. Even then, I doubted whether she would be good enough for me. If you haven't lived through this, you really don't understand what it means to be betrayed. That's why I won't let you hurt Jim. I understand. I want you to know that I really grew up emotionally and didn't cheat anymore. I didn't know I hurt you so much." She reached out to touch my hand, but I pulled it away. "Enough time has passed, and I've gotten over you. The love of a good woman, my Katie, helped too. I forgive you, but I can't forget what you did. I can't. Now I think we both know where we stand, so that's goodbye." I turned back and picked up my reports, pretending to read them while I waited for her to leave my office. I heard her stand up and thought she was leaving when I felt her hand touch my neck. "If you remember, we had a good time together. I could make it worthwhile if you looked at it from a different angle." I turned sharply with a furious fire flashing in my eyes. I spoke slowly, barely containing my anger through clenched teeth. "Get out of my office now." She wasted no time in leaving. I couldn't believe she tried this. I'm married, and she knows how I feel about cheating. I had to get up and walk around the hall several times to cool down. How does she still excite me this way? I can't believe that one minute she's trying to convince me that she's changed and will be faithful to Jim, and the next minute she's asking me for sex, basically suggesting cheating with him with me. Didn't she think this was what I wanted? I was absolutely clear from the start. Now I'm even more glad that she's out and Katie is in. I returned home that evening just as Katie pulled into the yard. I got out of the car and called to her as she walked into the house through the garage. "Honey, you won't believe what happened to me today." She quickly entered the house, so I thought that she urgently needed to go to the toilet, so I calmly entered the house. I thought I would have to wait to talk to my wife about my crazy day until she was done, but she was waiting right outside the door to attack. "I thought we agreed that you would be nice to Jenny for Jim's sake. She called me this afternoon crying that you kicked her out of the office and told her to go to hell. Just tell me, Ray, what did she do to deserve this? Why did you do this, Ray?" She was completely desperate. "Who did she say what?" "Jenny, I can't believe you did this. We agreed on a plan, and now you've done it." "Wait a minute, I think you do the same. Let me tell you the whole story. It took me some time, but I reproduced everything for her as best I could. You expect me to believe this, Ray? She came to you to apologize, and you lost your head and threw her out of the office. Please." "That's exactly what happened, as far as I remember. I told her everything as we discussed it. I tried to be polite. I didn't yell at her until the very end. I couldn't believe that one minute she was telling me how much she had changed, and the next he was rubbing my neck, offering sex in exchange for my silence. It made me appreciate how much better I am living with you." "That sounds a little forced, Ray. She told me she came to apologize. Then you told her you were going to tell Jim everything about her and even lie. She would be nothing in his eyes. You laughed about it. I know you sometimes can be vindictive. She said she really liked Jim and couldn't let you do that. She said she was sorry she hurt you, but she was young and stupid. Then she said she would do anything to make it right. She said she would tell Jim what happened between you two if you didn't lie or exaggerate. That's when you told her to either have sex with you or leave your office. So she left. Okay, I see that if you were worried about Jenny and me, any jealousy you might feel would make it believable, not to mention an almost automatic sympathy for another crying woman. I ask you to remember one thing. Our politics open doors at work. My office door is supposed to remain open, except for certain confidential events. If my door closes, it sends an email to Coach Fields. So, do you think I yelled at her and demanded sex with the door open? Do you think I'm that stupid? Oh, I'm so sorry, Ray. I forgot about that. I shouldn't have doubted you. Can you forgive me?" "Of course I can. I know how persuasive and cunning she can be. She played on your emotions and was on your side before you could start doubting her. She really is bad news, even worse than I thought. Now she's trying to interfere between us. I'm starting to worry that she'll try to ruin my friendship with Jim. I'm looking forward to calling Jim tonight." As luck would have it, the phone rang. We looked at each other, and I got a bad feeling in my stomach. As expected, it was Jim. "Ray, we need to talk." Jim began as soon as I managed to say hello. A lot of words, actually. What the hell are you up to? I just left Jenny at her house, and she was crying so hard I could only make out a couple of words. The word that was repeated the most was Ray, and then she started crying even more. Then she suddenly blurted out Ray tried to molest me. After that, she became hysterical and locked herself in her room. I think she eventually fell asleep from exhaustion, so I went outside to find out what you did to her. Ray, if you really pestered her, I will tear you apart. Into pieces so they can't even find fingerprints. What the hell have you done? Jim, I said as calmly as possible. Calm down, brother. We can discuss this, and I'll be happy to tell you everything that happened from the beginning, or if you want the short version, what happened today. Start with what happened today. I heard Jim exhale a couple of times and begin to calm down. Hey, if I were you, I'd be upset too. Oddly enough, this is what happened today. As you may have noticed when you brought her over on Saturday, Jenny and I knew each other. Without going into too many details, we've been dating for about 8 months. When she saw me and realized that we were friends, she was afraid that I might tell you something about her. As you noticed, she didn't leave your side on the weekend, but I didn't say anything. Words. She came to my office this afternoon. Before she could ask me not to tell you anything or ask me what I was going to tell you, I laid it out to her that you are like family to me and I need to warn you about her. I told her that I hope she has changed, but I am afraid that she has not, or that she might return to her old habits in the future. I plan to tell you, without any terrible details, that after 8 months of dating, she cheated on me. I told her I would get along with her for your sake, but if you're not around, she shouldn't be either. We discussed the incident and she tried to explain it to me, but I told her that it was a long time ago and that it passed. She tried to apologize to me for the incident and said it was a one-time thing. I told her that I had forgiven her a long time ago, but I would never be able to forget or trust her again. Then I told her that we both now know where we stand and it's time for her to leave. When I got home, Katie was already in a frantic mood and started screaming at me because Jenny called her in tears and said that I yelled at her and harassed her in my office. Think about that for a minute in my office, where there is a strict open-door policy. You were there, and you know what I'm talking about. If I actually pestered her there, I would have been fired by now. I was just reassuring Katie when you called. I was going to call you later tonight to talk about it, but that's not how it turned out. Jim, I'm sorry. I didn't want to tell you about all this, but I couldn't stay silent. Family sticks together. We look out for each other. She may have changed, like she told me, but I don't know, she's changed. I don't know what's going on in her head. I just know that I couldn't forgive myself if she did to you what she did to me, and I wouldn't have warned you about it. I'm sorry you found yourself in this situation. There was silence on the other end of the line, but I could hear him breathing. He absorbed everything I told him, and he didn't like it. He had to live with what I said versus what the love of his life told him. He fell hard for her, or he would have used the logical side of his brain and realized that I was telling the truth, or at least that I was smart enough not to harass someone in my office. What I was hoping for was that he would realize that I was probably right, or at least give me the benefit of the doubt, and we would talk again when he calmed down. However, I expected him to trust me enough that he might be angry with me for a while, as he would be angry because someone had deceived him. Then we'll talk. The third possibility that swirled around my mind was that he would believe her, and she would succeed in destroying our friendship. Ray, you lying bastard. You're only lying about her to get revenge for her leaving you. It's time for you to grow up, boy. Like you said, that was 6 years ago. I treated you like a brother, and you're doing this to me. I finally found happiness with her, but your jealousy and desire for revenge are trying to ruin it for me. I can't believe you put your problems before my happiness. Goodbye, Ray. I sadly put the phone down, thinking, the third option is really terrible. I may have just lost my best friend. How was it, dear? Katie asked. About as bad as it could be, I replied regretfully. I noticed that you didn't tell him that she proposed to you. Yes, in his condition, he would never have believed me. If I had not been there, I probably would not have believed it either. It also seemed like it would have been too much for him at once. Maybe you are right. She hugged me. I just hope he'll think about it and come to his senses after a while. I'm sure he'll sense your absence soon and come back. You'll see. I hope you're right. The next day, I kept my promise to keep an eye on her. I dug up an old photo of Jenny that I kept in a box of old things from college. I don't know why I saved it, but now I'm glad I did. I scanned it and sent it to a few friends I knew were single and frequented bars in our hometown. I called them and explained what was happening and asked them to keep an eye on her. I also told them that I had a fight with Jim over this. One guy asked me if this was my way of getting back at her for interfering between us. I told him I didn't care about her. Don't do it for me, do it for Jim. If you were Jim, would you want your friends to keep an eye on her for you? I told them all not to talk to Jim about it because he was very angry with me and he might get angry with them too. I didn't want him to be angry with everyone who cares about him. He was blinded by love now and did not listen to reason. Hey, we've all been there at least once. I told them not to follow her or stalk her or anything like that. I just wanted them to keep an eye out where they usually were, and if they saw her doing something she shouldn't, report it preferably to Jim. If they're too chicken to do that, send photos to my phone and I'll take care of it. One of the old employees, Steve, surprised me by asking if I wanted to put her to the test of loyalty. Being a Casanova type, he thought that he would try to approach her several times, and if she resisted, then she would be faithful. I told him to back off. If Jim suspects that we're trying to set her up, he'll be mad at all of us. I told him clearly and unambiguously, no, don't try to flirt with her. Is that clear? Everyone agreed to help, some with more enthusiasm, some with less, but I ended up with almost a dozen spies in my network. I just hoped it would all be in vain. 2 months passed, and I really missed Jim. I sent him a few emails trying to apologize and see if we could get over this. I told him I felt in hell without him. He simply replied, "Stay there." Rich, one of my spies, sent me a photo of Jenny dancing in a bar with another guy. He was of average height with sandy hair. I called him as soon as I received the photo. "Rich, this is Ray. How are you?" "Okay, Ray. I think it's your girlfriend dancing with some idiot in the photo. I took it last night. Thought I'd better send it to you first, in case it's not her." "That's definitely Jenny. Damn, I was hoping she'd given up her cheating ways. What happened after they danced?" "I didn't see her come in, so I don't know how long she was there or if she came alone. They kissed a little, but nothing like that. She left after about 15 minutes alone. He stayed and danced for about an hour. Looked like pretty innocent to me." "Maybe you're right, Rich. I won't do anything about it since it looks innocent, but let me know if she does anything else, okay?" "Sure, Ray, no problem. It's kind of fun playing a private detective. Next time, maybe I'll follow her outside, now that I know it's her." "Rich, don't get too close. We're not stalking her or anything, unless she looks like she's doing something she shouldn't. Even then, keep your distance. If I'm wrong, I don't want to make Jim mad at you. We're just trying to take care of him. Ray, I'm glad you're one of my friends. We all need a friend like that to watch out for us." "Hey, that's what friends are for, right? Thanks for the update. Talk to you later." I said goodbye to Rich and put the phone away. I tried to call Jim many times, but he let the calls go to voicemail when he saw it was me. I felt like I had cheated on him, and I wanted him to forgive me. I just hoped beyond all logic that she wouldn't offend Jim. 6 weeks later, Queens, another one of my network, called me and sent me a photo of Jenny leaving a bar with a tall guy who was only 5 or 6 inches taller than her, too short to be Jim. They were laughing, and I could only see half of his face. Queens said he followed them into the parking lot, but they left in separate cars. He told me they kissed for a minute or two before she got into her car, but was unable to take photos in the dark parking lot. She became more courageous. 2 weeks later, at another bar, Paul sent me photos of Jenny and a muscular guy a couple of inches taller than her. At the first, they danced intimately. At the second, they exchanged kisses at the table. Paul said they sat in her car for 10 minutes, but both heads were always visible, and they were in the front seats. They kissed some more, but again, it was too dark for his phone camera. The situation didn't look good. On Thursday night, Rich and another spy, Oscar, were at the Come On In bar, enjoying a few cold drinks and listening to the band, when Jenny and Jim walked in. "Looks like the lovers are still together," Oscar remarked, pushing Rich to look at the couple walking through the door. "She probably won't be looking for adventure today. Things could get really interesting. Isn't that the guy Paul caught with her in that box the other day?" "Damn, you have a good eye." "Yeah, I really think it's him. Let's get the cameras ready in case something happens. I know we won't have to show the pictures to Jim, but if it's entertaining, Ray will want to see them." Jim and Jenny chose a table off to the side where they had a little more privacy, and Mr. T's, Nate, that was his name, couldn't see them. They soon got their drinks and got up to dance when a good song came on. It took Nate 2 dances to spot her on the dance floor with Jim, and it was clear he didn't like it. There was a grimace on his face as he stood up and quickly walked towards Jenny. He slowly and subtly pushed Jim's shoulder, quite suddenly, with force. "You don't mind if I interfere?" "I don't think so." With these words, he stepped between them and led the stunned Jenny into the crowd of dancers. After the initial shock, Jim craned his neck and used his height to find them until Nate led Jenny into the hallway toward the restrooms. Like lightning, he followed them and had just reached the short corridor where the toilets were located when he saw the back door close. Jim ran outside, only to make sure that they had not gone outside and that it was a fire door from which there was no way back out. By the time he walked around the building and convinced the bouncer that he had accidentally left through the back door, about 5 minutes had already passed. After looking around the dance floor, he didn't find them. Since they were last seen heading towards the restrooms, Jim thought that Nate might have gotten her into one by opening the back door to distract him. Jim pushed through the crowd on the dance floor, finally reaching the hallway again. He was in such a hurry that he didn't notice the back door closing again. He heard screams coming from the men's room, so he forced the door open to find Nate on the floor, holding his groin with his right hand. Seeing Jenny standing against the far wall, holding her hands to her face and looking scared, the anger on Jim's face melted as he walked over to her and hugged her. His impression was that Nate tried to hurt her and she hit him. "It's okay, Jenny," Jim said soothingly. "He won't hurt you now, especially with me here. I didn't know you knew self-defense. You got him good. He deserves it. Let's step forward and I'll call the police." "No," Jenny screamed, and then realized that she had given away too much. Having calmed down, she added, "I mean, you're right, everything's fine now. Why ruin our evening? He'll tend to his wounds, and I'm sure he won't try that again. Just leave him alone, Jim." For a moment, Nate still squirmed and moaned. Jenny feared that his ability to form coherent thoughts and speak was about to return, so she took a deep breath to calm herself and said to Jim, "I think I'm ready to go home. I've had enough worry for one night." "Are you sure you don't want me to call the police? What if he tries this again with you or with someone else? You don't want this on your conscience, right?" "I'm sure he won't try that again," she said, glancing at him. "At least not with me," she added to herself. "Oscar and Rich contacted me the next day and told me about all the events of the evening." "So she left with Jim, letting him believe she hit Nate?" I asked incredulously. "Oscar, thank you for taking that risk. I really didn't expect it." "You're welcome, Ray. When we saw him take her to the restroom, we followed them to make sure Jim had backup. He fell for the rise of the back door being open, but we saw the men's room door close. Rich followed Jim outside, and I went inside. I just pretended I was really drunk and needed to go to the bathroom, so they ignored me. When he started being rude to her, well, I can't stand it when someone hits a woman, no matter what she is. I hit him from behind, turned him around, and hit him in the face. Then I left. By this time, Ray, I was behind Jim and stayed outside by the closet to listen in case he needed backup," Rich added. "I walked in after they left. It was Nate Birkins, remember him, don't you? He lived on my street, but was 2 years ahead of us in school. He got kicked off the football and track teams for losing his temper. He was a mess. I asked him if he needed help, and he just snapped at me. So I said, okay, and I never liked him anyway. He's just a brawler. Oscar chimed in, are you going to tell Jim what really happened? I don't think so. We don't have enough evidence yet. These are just rumors and snippets heard by chance. If you were Jim, would you think that's enough? No, probably not. However, Rich added, if it were me, I'd want to be warned so I could keep an eye on her myself. Or that I wouldn't do anything serious, like give her expensive gifts or money. She stuck his head so deep that he hasn't seen daylight for a month, Oscar interjected. He'll find a way to not believe it. I know, I've been in that situation myself, hell. We've all been there, and you know it. We'd kill the messenger and call it a day. If you don't have a smoking gun, he'll only get bigger and will get angry. I guess you're right. Thanks, guys. Next time I'm in town, I should treat you to a couple of mugs. That's for sure, Rich agreed. Make my whiskey, Oscar added. Of course. Bye, guys. Later that night, I told Katie what the guys told me. I just don't understand what's going through her mind. If she can't be happy with one guy, why doesn't she just find someone willing to have an open relationship? I know for a fact that Jim and I won't share, and she should know it too. That rule of non-division works both ways, buddy, reminded Katie. I'd rather not find out you were sneaking around behind my back or else. She playfully pointed her finger at me, made a gun out of it, and shot at me. Hey, I'm not a hypocrite. I'm strictly for one woman. I understand how she could interfere between Jim and me. I don't understand why she thought she could interfere between you and me, or why she should have even tried. What's going on here? What am I missing? I'm sure there's nothing here. She probably decided the best defense was offense. She wanted to stop you from telling Jim, so she thought she could keep you on your toes and keep me occupied. I don't like that she used it like that. Me. You're probably right. Damn, she's really starting to get on my nerves. I wish this would all be over already. The next afternoon, I had a meeting with Jim in his office under a false name, since I knew he would not want to meet with me. As soon as the secretary told me to go through the third door on the right, I took off to get there before he could come out into the hallway and stop me. There was no need to worry as he was sitting at his desk finishing his notes when I walked in and closed the door. He raised his head and started to get angry, but I stopped him in his tracks. Before you kick me out, for the sake of all the good times we had together, do me a little favor and watch this. I placed a small DVD player on his desk, already set to a video of the cameraman quietly walking up to the back of a red Mustang, showing the license plates Gen 1 for a second, then walking up to the side of the car. As the camera approached the car's suspension was creaking as it jumped. It's impossible to describe the feeling of déjà vu I had when I first saw it, and it goes without saying that I didn't want to listen to it again while Jim was watching. The camera looked into the back seat and clearly showed Jenny with some guy. Jim's face paled, and the edges of his face took on a greenish tint. I was ready to hand him the trash can. He felt the same way I did when I first watched it. It's a good thing he hasn't had lunch yet. I turned off the player. He had seen enough. When he calmed down, I gave him a paper towel that I took from the bathroom to wipe his face. Jim, I'm so sorry I had to show you this. If you're still mad at me, I understand, and I'll leave without a fight. I had to show you this because you need to know about it. I didn't take it. A friend of ours did. He and I are the only ones who know. It's the only copy because he recorded over it, and I deleted it from my computer after I made that copy. He made a sworn promise about silence. They meet for 3 or 4 weeks, as far as we know, on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. That explains a lot, Jim said, spitting it into the trash can. We have lunch meetings with my boss these days. She knew I'd be busy. There is one more thing according to custom. They will meet in about 15 minutes, and I know where if you are interested. Went. Okay, but let me drive. You probably shouldn't drive right now. The ride was quiet for a while. I saw the whirlwind spinning in Jim's head from my news. Suddenly, Jim spoke up. Ray, I'm sorry. I never should have trusted her more than I trusted you. She said you broke up with her when you caught her with another guy. She said you lost your temper and started screaming, making a public scene. She thought you wanted to go back to her and start something on the side, and she was going to tell Katie, but I talked her out of it. I should have known you wouldn't do that, brother. Your style. I'm sorry, man. Don't worry about it, we're brothers. I'm just sorry that she interfered between us, and I missed you the whole time we were at odds. When you called me that day, she had already called Katie with her lies. When I returned home, Katie attacked me with reproaches for allegedly harassing Jenny and making her cry. What is she? I'll kill her. Easy there, Jim. We don't need you to go to jail because of her. I'm not saying revenge is out of place, but think before you do anything. The best revenge is no good if it can come to you in prison and laugh at you the whole time. Yes, you're right. I'll try to keep my cool. By the way, it was Oscar who took Nate Birkins out in the bathroom that night, not Jenny. I'm guessing she didn't tell you the whole story of what happened. Are you kidding me? What else has she done? I told the rest of the story. We drove slowly past the alley, and after about 3 houses, we saw a red Mustang parked on the right side. The big truck was parked right in front of the alley, so we couldn't drive through the alley even if we wanted to. We parked on the street a little further down the alley and walked towards the now familiar sight of a bouncing red car. Jim came close and saw them. He stopped, realizing the reality of the situation, and was about to yank the car door when I stopped him. I put a finger to my lips to remind him to be quiet and whispered, I have an idea. As the unsuspecting couple moaned and screamed for their pleasure, I led him to the truck parked across the street and began connecting the hose to the tank. It was a water truck, the kind that people with backyard swimming pools call when they need to fill them. I know it by the mark on the side. Jim understood my plan and connected the other end of the 6-inch hose to the one I had just attached to the truck. He carefully placed his end into the front seat through the open window and waved to me. I opened the valve all the way. Within seconds, the inside of the car began to fill with water, and it began to overflow through the open windows. We stood back to watch the fun. Jim and I laughed as a couple of heads came up to breathe, spitting and coughing. We laughed even harder as various items of clothing began to wash over the newly created waterfall and into the street. We heard laughter behind us and saw Nick standing there laughing so hard he had trouble breathing. When Jenny stuck her head out of the window, I turned off the water. She reached for the outside doorknob and opened the door. After a large wave rushed into the alley, she got out, not noticing that she was topless, and angrily ran towards the 3 of us. Ray, I should have known you were behind this. If you wanted to get into my pants, you didn't have to. I interrupted her. I never want to go near you or your pants again. I thought I made that clear years ago and again in my office last month. Remember, if you don't learn from your mistakes, you are doomed to repeat them. Last time you got wet, this time you got wet. By the way, I don't know why you're trying to destroy my marriage and my friendships, but you better cover yourself. Get yours up or you'll get arrested. I think your top is headed down the drain over there. She looked at herself and saw that I was right. Washing off 3 shades of red, she looked back to see her laundry quickly flowing downstream. This caused another round of laughter among the 3 of us as she quickly ran after them, her wet, heavy skirt sliding down as she went. She almost fell when he fell into her lap and pulled him back up, chasing her clothes. Manny had packed enough clothes to look normally dressed, but he was still wet to the bone. He approached us, shouting angrily in Spanish, probably cursing us. Then he saw Nick and suddenly changed his mind. Nick spoke up, Manny, I'll take you back to work. I parked at the end of the lane. Get in the truck. You're too wet to sit in a taxi. Manny walked towards the truck, muttering to himself. Jim asked, Nick, what made you show up? I'm sorry to tell you that I am the cameraman of the video you saw. Ray told me he was coming today, and I guessed you two would be here, so I came to help. Guys, you've already done it. Everything is under control, so I'll go. What made you guys flood the car? This is so damn funny. I thought I was going to burst out laughing. The look on her face was priceless. I caught it all on video. He picked up his camera phone. It was Ray's idea. I was about to pull him out of the car when Ray stopped me and, well, you saw the rest. It would be even funnier if... Yeah, I feel your pain, man. Been there, done that, and got the damn t-shirt. If you need anything, be sure to call me. Nick hugged him and walked down the alley. He called back, "Don't be a stranger, Jim." "Thank you, I know who my real friends are now, including you, Ray," he said, turning to me. We hugged again, adding a friendly pat on the back. When we finished, we noticed Jenny walking back down the alley towards us. Nick, who was walking towards her, stopped to pick up a piece of pink fabric and throw it onto a nearby tree. When it got stuck in a branch, it turned around and turned out to be Jenny's shirt. We laughed when we saw the furious look on her face. Nick laughed loudly and left. Jenny was beside herself. If possible, I think she's even angrier now than when she first approached us. Around this time, I heard the water truck driver loudly and angrily ask what had happened to his water. I went to deal with it, and Jim and Jenny were shouting back and forth. I explained to the driver what was going on and offered to pay him for the entire load of the truck. He declined my offer, saying, "I just wish I could see her get her reward." I walked back to the car as Jenny started it up and got ready to drive away. Jim gave her his final edict. "Jenny, I never want to see your ass again. If you need something of your own from my apartment, you can send a friend to get it. And lastly, Jenny, go to hell." I joined Jim, adding in unison, "And stay there.